Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, another great episode on tap for you here tonight. Again, it's a Sunday. Pitt just scrimmaged, the first scrimmage of the fall, which is always a good one for Pitt to figure out where they are, what they need to work on. Usually scrimmage number 2 is where you find out where things really are, and then game 1, game 2, and then we'll find out where the Pitt Panthers are this year when they face a really good road trip and hostile environment into West Virginia. We'll go over a bunch of stuff over there as well. But we'll talk about the scrimmage, defense coming out on top with the first scrimmage in the books with some players that I've recently heard from the scrimmage that did pretty well during the Saturday scrimmage, was very physical. It's good to have a scrimmage where you'll have one, we had the one this previous Saturday, you'll have one more next Saturday, and then you'll cut it there as camp comes to a close. And then you start to really dive into the playbook and eventually start getting ready for the Duquesne Dukes for week 1 of the college football season at Acrisure Stadium for the Pitt Panthers. But first off, you guys always know the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Tremendous people. Bill and Alan, 2 great Pitt men, season ticket holders, athletics director fund members, also 2 Alliance 412 members. But they're great people. And anytime you go into Colonial Beer, you have any questions about what you're looking for, the numerous selections they have in there. You guys have seen me post plenty of different things online overall about the sponsorship with them. They've done a great job. They're great people to talk to. Make sure when you're in there, ask them for anything you need. There's plenty of different selections throughout there, but they're truly great people. That's the number one thing. And they're a small business. Anytime you can help out a Pitt man and Pitt men or women that are able to have a business and we're able to hop on board and get something from there, especially the Hail to Pitt Icy Light can. Anytime you can get one of those as well, be able to stock up plenty of different selections also in there as well. But make sure you go in there today. Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. The show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Again, Brian Thompson, a tremendous individual, does a lot of work in the community, has a great family, comes from a great family. But the best thing about Brian is he's not like one of the larger law firms. He cares about you, the individual, and doesn't treat you like a number. He treats you as an individual and finds the solutions that you need to be successful in your case. Brian truly is one of the best. You guys have gotten to meet him at numerous games in the previous years. The spring game was a huge one this past year. Obviously great conversations, an easy person to approach, an easy person to call. And if Brian doesn't have the answers that you need, he'll still guide you through the process and get you in front of people that you need to get in front of to get your questions answered. Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Last but not least, the show is sponsored by the K Collection coffee brand by Austin Kitchen. The cold design, again, this is personally my favorite, the AK Espresso. You get one of these in the morning, you're really set for the entire day. Again, never been a coffee person at all, but let me tell you something. This stuff gets you going in the morning. All you need is one of these things, and man, you are good to go. Plenty of different Pitt fans have gotten it. Appreciate everyone who has gotten on board. We've had some people from the SEC also getting involved in this. It was kind of funny down the SEC country, but also technically Big Ten country because he's out in Seattle. So we've gotten some people from Washington buying the product as well. Again, personally, cannot say how good enough the AK Espresso gets me going in the morning. He still has 2 other collections on there. Make sure you go to today. The K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen, Mount Lebanon alum, Coastal Carolina national champion, and now in the Seattle Mariners organization in Major League Baseball. Again, the K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen at www.thekingscraft.com. Make sure you go today. So again, really good topics on the board here tonight. Number of different things. A lot of things really happened this week, which is really good overall, just for a lot of us, for fans to talk about, things to dive into, things that I've heard before. It was really good to see it out in public. But the number one thing is, let me fix my thing here. Let's see if I can get this going. There we go. So number one, Allen Greene was able to talk to the media about a number of different items, topics, revenue sharing. From anybody that I talked to within the athletic department, the first thing they've always talked about is the fact that they're going to get whatever they need to do to be successful in football. You saw a lot of that from Allen Greene here, especially this past week when he was talking to the media. I think Paul Zeiss asked on the script there, was the 75%. He even said, is that even a real number? I've heard between 80 to 85% is going to football. That's really where they're at. But I think even more so with the NIL Alliance 412, who has done a phenomenal job for Pitt football and Pitt athletics and bringing in great talent, especially for Pitt football and Pitt basketball, especially when they went to the the NCAA tournament a couple years ago. But it was good to hear Allen Greene talk again. I had some people on X go below my post and say, the guy's invisible. You never see him. I mean, he's done now 7 public appearances where he's talked to, whether it's WTAE, WPXI, the ACC network, even live interviews that we've done here at practices. That's actually more than what Heather Light's done in the last 3 years. So I don't know if he's really invisible, on top of what else could there be to talk about besides growing the athletic department, which he's done a good job of producing more revenue, more donations. He also released recently online, was able to talk about the additions to the Panther Club. The Panther Club reached its goal, but went over their goal and actually had the most donations it's ever had in its history. Allen Greene was able to talk about that, but also, too, how the goal is really here. He wants to take it to here, and he thinks for Pitt to continue to grow, they need to be able to grow more of their donations, but also, too, work with a lot more people in terms of being able to build more revenue, corporate sponsorships, and he continues to work on that. But also the great hires he's brought on board. Kyle Bruce, who comes in as the chief marketing officer from Ole Miss. Again, a great hire out of Tennessee. He brought in a guy for their chief revenue officer. They're certainly building in those areas and really the long-term structure of what he wants to build at the University of Pittsburgh. And I think to be honest with you, I think he's done a good job so far in just a short 8 to 9 months he's been here. Still plenty of ways to go. I think there's just for Pitt to even get to that point, they need to continue to grow in that direction. But he's done a good job of getting Pitt in a good position to where they're spending money in the right places, especially right now. He talks about allocating investments into certain areas. So there was a number of good topics there. We'll talk about that later on. But first up, the Pitt football scrimmage defense comes out on top. The one thing that I think that was good to hear is last year compared to this year. Like last year, the defense won the first scrimmage. They win this first scrimmage again. The difference is with this group, from what we've heard from a number of different people, including myself, that I got to hear from a number of different people, the offense is much farther ahead than what we saw from last year. Last year, the first scrimmage, there was a lot of mishaps, a lot of false starts, procedure penalties. That wasn't the case here today. Eli Holstein did not have a great day, but he had a good day. Last year, he did not have a good day at all, had a bad day. Nate Yarnell did really bad last year in that first scrimmage. Eli Holstein had himself a good day, and we look at some of the players that really stood out on this scrimmage in this game that were able to really stand out, make their presence known. I think we'll start to see more and more names pop up. You'll hear some of these names before, but some new names will pop up in that second scrimmage. A couple names here. The first off, Jasir Whittington. Jasir Whittington had himself a hell of a day on the defensive line. He's certainly making his presence known. He's working his way up that depth chart. Right now, I put him easily on the 2 deep right now with Sean Fitzsimmons, number 1, Nick James, number 2, Francis Brayu, number 3, and then Jasir Whittington really putting that next step into number 4. I think he's done a hell of a job to this point, but he really had a good day on Saturday. Another player that did really well, Francis Brayu. Francis Brayu had a number of players, a number of great plays in the backfield, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks technically when the whistles were blown. Had himself a really good day. He continues to get better. I think as the season has going to go on, he's going to continue to get better and better in his sophomore season. He's talked about it in numerous areas in terms of talking to the media. Last year, he was worried more about trying to look like a D1 football player. And that's a guy, when you hear him say that, he's more thinking about what he needs to do on the football field rather than just playing. This year, he's able to think less and just play. And that's going to elevate his play on the football field. He's starting to show that. We've seen something from anything that we've talked about. Was able to hear he did a really good Saturday for him, and he continues to show at a high level. Isaiah O'Neal had some really good plays in there. Ghost, he continues to bump up in that ranking as well. I think he has a chance to really bust open and be able to get onto that 2 deep. I think the good thing for him, from anybody that I've talked to, is able to gain weight from this past year. And I think that's really going to help him, because last year when we talked about players who were really struggling on the defensive tackle and the defensive line, we talked about early on in the year where games 1, 2, and 3, you kind of saw Pitt struggle a little bit when it came to being able to sustain, stopping the run, being able to build out on pass rushes. Isaiah O'Neal was really, Ghost was one of those guys, was kind of getting thrown around quite a bit. I was very vocal about it. Other people were very vocal about it. But him adding weight really only has helped him, and it's starting to show. We heard about it in the spring, the summer OTAs. We heard a little bit more about it, but really in the fall here, it's starting to come together where his body and his function, he's able to really play at a high level at the weight that he's added on, about roughly 15 to 20 pounds. I think it's going to help him overall because he's a smaller defensive tackle. I think it was better for him to add that weight so he's not getting thrown around like that. He's still able to have his speed, violent hands. They were able to talk about that, and really he had himself a good day. Another player, possibly the second best on the day besides Jasir Whittington, was Braylon Lovelace. Braylon Lovelace had an interception during the day, had multiple tackles. I mean, he was all over the football field. Him and Rasheem Biles all over the football field making plays. As you can imagine, we expect this linebacker crew to really step up this year. They're playing at a high level early on, which is pretty normal. And again, we've talked about this before. The offense is usually behind the defense. You're putting more pieces together. Luckily, though, from what we've heard and from myself and numerous others, being able to talk to enough people, the offense is much farther ahead this year than it was last year. So that's a really good thing. But defense, again, takes the victory in this one. But Rasheem Biles, Braylon Lovelace, Kyle Lewis, a number of great plays in the backfield, and he had 2 or 3 tackles for a loss. And on the back end, a guy who continues to play at a high level, Cruz Brookins. And I think he's kind of starting to solidify himself there. Him and Javon McIntyre as the 2 starters at the safety position. So really, those are the guys on the defense side of the football that really played at a high level. On the offensive side of the football, Eli Holstein had himself a good day, not a great day. Had a really good spurts of where the times where the offense was really clicking and then times where it was really inconsistent. But Eli had himself a good day. Really good to hear this. On the offensive line, Lyndon Cooper and Ryan Bayer had themselves a really good day in terms of protection and being able to move the line of scrimmage and really be able to move bodies up front. They had their times, especially where Pitt's rotated in, the 1s versus 1s, 2s versus 2s, 3s versus 3s. Pitt did a really good job and really showing out this past Saturday. They were talking about how Ryan Bayer and Lyndon Cooper really had themselves a really good day. So that was really good to hear. A newer name that we have not heard a lot about, Pat Narduzzi has talked about him at times and saying, he's potentially got a potential chance to get on the field. Well, he kind of really helped himself on Saturday, and that's at the wide receiver position. Tony Kinsler. Tony Kinsler had himself a day. He continues to really blossom and starts to build out to where he's not had that freshman blip yet, to where they kind of just like fall off the face of the earth. We've seen a number of true freshmen, because when it's a lot to go from high school to college, he's starting to play at a really high level. He really hasn't hit that freshman wall yet, that true freshman wall, which was pretty good. He had a couple really good catches at the end of practice. Apparently, he had a freakish catch over on the outside going down the sideline. Had a pretty damn good football catch there. And a name we've heard a lot about here so far, Blue Hicks. I mean, I think Pitt, when your name gets popped up this much and you're just being flooded this much, whether it's through the media or through sources, I think Pitt's got themselves a good wide receiver at this point. And we knew about him as a guy that was well known for speed. Anybody that I talked to from Louisville has a really good wide receiver room, a lot of depth there, about 4, 5, 6 guys I got in that room. Blue Hicks wanted an opportunity to play this year, not have to wait another year. I think for us, for our benefit, we were able to grab him. And I think he's going to be a really good addition this year. Has been really good in the slot, being able to create mismatches, a really good route runner, but he's able to understand this offense and play at a high level to where he's able to really flush it and be able to play at a high level of speed where he's not thinking, he's just playing at a really fast pace, which has been really good. And last but not least, Raphael Poppy Williams was able to have a number of really good plays in there. But the offense overall was just not as consistent as you want it to be. And I think it continues to get better, which is something really good to hear. Last year, I think we were a little bit nervous because the offense just in that first scrimmage did not play well at all. It was just really, really bad. When you're hearing procedure penalties, a lot like in, if you remember from the game last year, the horrible, horrible series where Pitt was really at the 5-yard line and really had 3 or 4 false start penalties, a holding call against Clemson down, inside the 5, inside the 5-yard line. It ended up being out at the 20 and having to kick a field goal. That kind of stuff just can't happen this year. And I think that they're not having the procedure penalties. It's just, just those mishaps on the outside, not being able to just, missing those holes. Joel Goff, heard a little bit about him. Nothing, didn't have like the greatest day in the world, was able to get touches, was able to do a good job for what he was there. But the offense being more consistent, but also really good, was really good to hear about Ryan Bayer and Lyndon Cooper, which again has been really good to hear. Didn't hear about any of the other offensive linemen, but I also did hear that Pitt suffered roughly 2 injuries on the day, 2 starters. Still working on the names involved with that, but there were a couple injuries that happened from the practices. From my understanding, it's nothing that's going to happen to where it's like, it's not season ending, which is a good thing, but I think they're probably going to be held out of practice for about 3 or 4 days. From my understanding and from what I was told through a number of different sources, a couple injuries, 2 starters between offense and defense, but in positions where there's good depth. That's the good thing. But again, they're not season ending. I think just out of precaution, you'll probably see, 4 to 5 days where they're out, between, Sunday today, the off day today, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe come back for a little bit on Thursday. And then if they're feeling well, they play in the second scrimmage, or they just don't play at all and they wait for them to get back 110% to where they're able to play and really get ready for that week 1 game against Duquesne. But a couple injuries there. Again, we're working on the names that occurred there, but overall, the defense expected them, personally, I expected them to win the scrimmage because it's the first one. We hear it every single year. I expected the defense to be out in front of everything else. You have some new offensive linemen in there. You've got Jeff Percy, who was starting at left tackle, Keith Gouveia challenging with Jackson Brown at the left guard position. You'll hear about a lot of those names in between there. Again, I think overall it was a good scrimmage. You'd like to come out healthy again. They suffered a couple injuries. Thank God it wasn't season ending or nothing, but get those guys healthy and get them back. But overall, defense took care of business with, truly what I expected to this point. But a number of great players through there, a number of great plays. The defense really putting up a number of really good numbers, especially too when it came to the 2s versus 2s, getting a lot of tackles for losses. So that's really good as well. But I think as we go on through the weeks, we want to see the offense continue to progress and become more consistent. But also really good to hear guys like, Eli Holstein had himself a good day. Cole Gonzalez had himself a good day as well, which, again, I think Cole Gonzalez is going to be a very good addition to this group because he's a quarterback that came from Western Carolina to Oklahoma for this past spring that came over back to Pitt, which I think is a really good thing because he knows the offense really well. And from anybody that I've talked to, he's done a great job of helping, especially the wide receivers like Deuce Spann, Blue Hicks. Those guys get really in tune with the offense. So that's been a really good thing overall as well. Guys, we'll get here to the comments pretty soon here. One here, smash the like button, subscribe, join Alliance 412. As always, appreciate it. And if you have not done so, we've got a number of people in here right now. If you're over on X or on Facebook, head over to YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to the show. It always helps out with the algorithm, guys. Cannot appreciate it enough. Please head over to YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe. We continue to grow the channel. We'll get to some more of these questions here about College Game Day, SKSK, and then Adam Vincic. Appreciate you always being here, brother. We'll get to your question here in a second. Second topic of tonight is number 2, Allen Greene. Again, we talked a little bit before the show, talking about how he was able to talk to the media on a number of different things, which is a really good thing overall. I'm not sure if everyone saw it here. Maybe able to pull it up here. Let's see if I can pull it up. While that's loading, we'll see if we can pull it up. But the highlights of it all. Number 1, talking about revenue sharing. And again, there were numerous questions, the 75%, 80%. The one really good thing is that he talked about being able to give Pitt football whatever it needs in terms of money that it needs to be successful and to pay players. To that extent, from anything I've heard from behind the scenes, people close to that situation agree with that. They said he's 110% on top of that. He also talked about how it's really these coaches guiding where they're going with in terms of bumpy waters. Okay, some people took that as a negative comment. Well, it's like a flight attendant. Not sure if I would have used that analogy, but I understand what he was saying. The analogy of, hey, right now with the house settlement, revenue sharing, the rules changing, numerous different things going through change right now. It's still just we have turbulence right now in the air. But right now, the plane's not falling out of the sky. We know exactly what we're doing. We're adjusting to things day to day. And he said really being able to guide all the players that are currently there right now on Pitt's roster, which is a really good thing. The one thing that I'm just not a fan of is he talked about general managers. Obviously, Pitt basketball has I think it's Jake Kuntz as the basketball general manager. In my opinion, I truly believe that the football team needs an in-house GM. And I've heard that from numerous people. They need that in-house GM from, what I've heard from, the back end of it. Pat Narduzzi talking about Graham Wilbert and potentially Coultry being the, assistants or associate general managers. I just don't know how I feel about that because, you truly want one guy. And Allen Greene talked about how, people might have a general manager, but their job role is different at every university, which I agree with. I've reached out to a number of different schools, a number of different universities, whether it's been Power 4, Group of 5, even a couple of FCS schools who have actually hired a GM, which, to them, I'm not really sure if they needed to spend that kind of money on a GM or anything like that. But, hey, if you're willing to do it and you're willing to spend that money, go ahead and do it. But in my opinion, I think for Pitt, I think they need an in-house GM, whether it's a Doug Whaley pulling him over from Alliance 412, something of that nature to get someone in there who can really develop those conversations where you're in-house, you have those daily conversations, you're not surprised by something that comes up, whether it was a Kenny Johnson stuff this year about, going in and asking for more money because of Penn State or doing whatever. I think just overall you need an in-house GM. And they seemed like, with Narduzzi wanting to run his program that way, I get it. And again, Pat Narduzzi right now is your head football coach, so you allow him to do what he wants to do. But also, too, if it doesn't work out, guess what? It's on him. At the end of the day, if Pat Narduzzi makes the decision not to have a general manager or put his recruiting department as a general manager, which I think is asinine, then go ahead. But guess what? You're in charge of that decision. So if it doesn't work, you're going to get the heat for it. And I think that when you're watching everything right now with Joan Gable, the new chancellor at the University of Pittsburgh, you got Allen Greene, the new AD at the University of Pittsburgh. I think right now, I think there's an understanding of pressure on this coaching staff that they have to go out there and improve and win. Obviously, Pitt started 7-0 when they were healthy, when they went down the road of losing Ryan Jacoby up front, Branson Taylor up front, Lyndon Cooper up front for a number of games, switching Ryan Bayer to left tackle, bringing Isaiah Montgomery for his first game of action, Jackson Brown for his first game of action. You saw so many different guys go through the turnstile at offensive line. Then you had Desmond Reed out for a couple games, Raphael Poppy Williams out for a couple games. As we talked about here before, Raphael Poppy Williams tore ligaments in both of his thumbs. We hear about Eli Holstein talking about how he had that surgery during the offseason. He was 110% during the spring camp, and now he's 100% still during the fall camp, which is really good. But I think that, again, they had that 7-0 start, but just because you had that many injuries does not give you, excuse to lose 6 games in a row. Julian Duggar should have started the bowl game. I mean, these are routine, this is routine shit. And again, was Julian Duggar better than Eli Holstein? No, clearly not. But under no circumstance, when it comes to that bowl game, should Julian Duggar not have been the starter. I mean, he's a scholarship quarterback. I think that decision overall kind of, made me look at it from a different angle to where it's, just like, what the hell are we doing? That's just mind-blowing to me. But also, too, they should have won the Clemson game. I think the game plan around that was just absolutely fantastic. The defense, besides the first drive of the game, the last drive of the game, looked really damn good. I think that's a really good thing overall. I think when you look at the direct, how do I want to say? Let me see. I think overall, when you look at a number of different aspects, what's the name of it? As long as this team, for where it was health-wise, they lost 6 games in a row. Again, they should have won the Clemson game. I still think they should have won the Virginia game, and they still should have won the Boston College game. I mean, those are 3 games they should have won. That's 10 wins right there. Or if you slip and lose the Boston College game for where it was at, because it was at Boston College, you still should have had 2 extra wins there. They should have had 9 wins last year. And then even going into that game and the bowl game, I understand, again, there was 11 players out. You're down to your 3rd or 4th quarterback. I get it. There's a lot of guys missing. Wide receivers missing, offensive linemen missing. Your starting quarterback isn't there. It's totally understandable. But at the same time, though, Julian Duggar should have been starting that game. I mean, easily was better than, and David Lynch is a great kid. But Julian Duggar was a 10 times better quarterback. It's 100%. That's not even a question. But overall, I think Allen Greene answered the questions. It's good to know. And again, said they're going to be spending whatever it takes for Pitt football to be successful. And again, I've heard that from behind the scenes. It says roughly the 80 to 85% from anything that I've heard from behind the scenes, which again is a little bit more than most schools in the ACC, about roughly in terms of where the SEC is. But then on top of that, what's going to have to really kick up is the amount of revenue they're building with the NIL collectives in terms of Alliance 412, which they continue to do a great job by bringing in more and more guys. A guy like, for instance, Adam Gunn, a great partnership with him. He was brought on, a guy that Alliance 412 was working with. So at the end of the day, I think overall he's done a good job at this point, and they're spending money. That's the biggest thing for me, is the proof's in the pudding that they're spending the money. That's for me. That's really the thing that matters. So although people I know, for instance, look at this team for where it is right now, the biggest thing is they got to stay healthy when they go throughout this year. And we're going to talk about a little bit about the schedule here going through here. We'll talk about some of the questions here as we dive into it. But it was good to hear, again, Allen Greene talk about it. And again, I thought he answered the question perfectly, to where he said, where people are asking for numbers or percentages. I mean, people who ask those questions, one, don't even know what they're talking about to begin with, which is pretty comical. But although the Pitt football is going to get what it needs to be successful, and from anybody I've heard from behind the scenes, he's been very vocal, especially at practices. He's been there behind the scenes. I think he's done a good job of layering himself from being out of the media way, being out of the way when it comes to those conversations. He's done a good job of being out in public about 6 or 7 times now, which again is like more than what Heather Lyke was in like the last 3 or 4 years, which is really good to see. But the more and more conversations are there, which is a really good thing. See, we went through the scrimmage. We went through that. My prediction: the floor 8-4, ceiling 10-2. For WRW Pitt, good prediction. My prediction: I think the floor, really for me is 7-5, and then the ceiling for me is 10-2. I think this football team, when you talk to not just the people on the South Side, because you got to decipher, from a number of different people where they're hyping certain guys up. You get it, but you want to be able to see it first. And we've gone through this numerous years. You're going to hear stuff from the South Side. This guy looks great. This guy looks great. Okay. We need to see it week 1, week 2. And again, me personally, I'm really going to judge this football team on what it could be this year by week 3 when it goes to Morgantown. In a hostile environment, Eli Holstein. And again, people always ask these questions from last year. Eli Holstein was a redshirt freshman, and he played for the first time ever last year. I mean, the numbers, if he stays healthy, he throws for over 3,000 yards. For a guy that's a redshirt freshman, I think people really forgot about that. A guy that played at that type of level. He had a couple step backs here and there between the Cal game. They were really dropping 8, only rushing 4. And I think that's a great call for, allowing a guy, prime example for Cade Bell, and how he adapts to what they're looking to do when it comes to play calling. I think that's a massive factor in what they need to do. Play calling is a massive importance going into the second year. He did a lot of good things right last year, but there's a lot of things where he got wrong. Again, we can go through a number of different plays where, maybe he should have ran the ball there. And I think they need to be better at running the football this year to where guys aren't dropping 8 and allow guys like Des Reed, Jules Goff, and Jakarian Bosey Turner, who's going to get a lot of touches this year as well. He's going to get a lot of carries. But you want those guys to be able to perform at a high level to allow yourself to throw. If you're going to throw 30 or 40 times a game, you better be able to make sure you're running the football and moving the football 3-4 yards at a time whenever you're really dropping down to run. That's important. Des Reed is a guy that he's going to have to produce in the run game, but he's also going to produce in the passing game. I think he's going to be one of those guys that, again, just really picks up where he left off, but really allowing him to adjust to the Power 4 level last year going into this year as a incumbent All-American is a really good thing for him. But for him, that level he was at last year, we could use that again, but we need him to take that next step. The same thing goes for Eli. The same thing goes for the offensive line, which I personally think the offensive line could be the most important position at this point, because protecting Eli means if you protect him, everything else falls into play. The next thing is Kenny Johnson has to take that next step and being that wide receiver one that we need. And then behind him, we need more guys to step up in that wide receiver room. We've heard again today. We talked about Tony Kinsler, a guy who had a really number of good catches in the scrimmage on Saturday. Those are really good things. But you want to see a lot of these guys begin to step up and be more productive. And the same thing goes to the defensive line. It can't take 2, 3, 4 games for the defensive line to pick it up. We want that defensive line to play at a high level. Blaine Spires, out of Utah State, Youngstown kid, has really come about and really started to perform really well. From what it looks like, Jaden Moore, the 4-star transfer out of Oregon, will play it starting at one defensive tackle side, and then the other side will be Jimmy Scott, who's done a really good job returning starter. He'll be there. But Blaine Spires, Joey Zielinski, Nate Temple, those guys will really, really get them on the defensive end. But also Zach Crothers and Maverick Gracio are two other guys who continue to start getting better, as Tim Doust has talked about that in a number of different press conferences, which is also great to hear. You need more depth there, but more importantly, you need guys to step up, because there were a number of different defensive ends last year that we brought in that just did not perform. That cannot happen again if Pitt wants to succeed and win 9+ games. It's just a fact. They have to perform, and it has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's going to be another 7-5 year. That's what it comes down to. What are you hearing about BC Thompson? $10 super chat. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the super chat. As always, guys, super chat button down below gets you to the front of the line and gets you up on the screen to talk about it. Things I'm hearing about the special teams right now. It's a great comment. Caleb Junko looks to be the guy in his last year, looks to be the punter again going into this season, which, nothing really changed on that. He's been, we've seen him be, from anybody I've talked to, he's been more consistent in practice, but then again, we need to see it in the games. I think overall, we know what we're going to get with Caleb. It's not going to be a perfect 110% of the time. We certainly saw a number of different struggles, but he's here for one more year. I think that's kind of solidified. At the kicker position, James London really came in during the spring, came in from Murray State. A guy came in, was very highly productive where he was previously at Murray State and really produced at a high level. But then you saw towards the end of spring camp and then the game at Acrisure Stadium for the spring game, he did not look good at all. During Saturday's scrimmage, did a good job there, hit a number of field goals. But then again, too, they're playing at the Southside facility. It's not Acrisure Stadium. It's different. I think you got to get more of those guys in there to get them adapted to Acrisure Stadium. When you look at Acrisure, it's a lot different than every other stadium Pitt's going to be playing at. I think that, personally, I think him or Scarton's going to be the kicker for Pitt. But I think the more and more you see it, I think James London right now looks to be the starter. But I think just right now he's been very inconsistent. I think when it comes to the special teams guys right now, he's been very inconsistent. You want to see more and more of those guys become more consistent. So, but then again, he kicked very well this past Saturday, but it's at the Southside facility. You're not going to play games at the Southside facility. I think I think this coming Saturday for the last scrimmage, they'll be at Acrisure Stadium. And that'll be very interesting. And I'll be looking to hear about that and see how he does. But in the spring, we saw him as a guy who was very inconsistent. Thank you, sir, for the $10 super chat. As always, again, guys, get you to the front of the line. $10, any type of super chat, any type of donation to the podcast. We appreciate it. I like the wide receiver depth this year. Take some pressure off Dez. Expected to see more options underneath. Yeah, Gio, I think when it comes to this wide receiver group, and again, there's a number of guys that really still need to step up, but it's great to hear names like Kenny Johnson, and then Blue Hicks just seems to be the guy number 2 right now, and we expect him to play in the slot. I think on the outside, Deuce Span's going to be out there. You'll have that competition. Raphael Poppy Williams. C.J. Lee is back 100% from what I was told. He played in the scrimmage. Not at full reps, was a little bit limited. They want to make sure that they keep him healthy. But the fact that he's back 100% is really, really good. takes more pressure off of Reed, but also too, I think it's good. It takes pressure off of Reed, but you got to make sure you use those guys. Kenny Johnston was there last year, and only so many targets came his way. Now, obviously, Konate Mumpfield was there, which was a big target, but you want to be able to use more and more of your guys. Use everyone across the field, which I think is a big thing. Also, too, minimizing drops from last year. We saw towards the end of the year, Raphael Poppy Williams was dropping footballs just because of the ligament tears in both of his thumbs. But that just goes for any of those guys. Multiple different guys had drop issues. We want to see that stuff cleaned up this year. It needs to be better than last year. If Pitt wants to take that next step and be very productive and win 9+ games, have an opportunity to go to Charlotte and be in an ACC title game, they got to produce and go to a higher level and be more productive. And, the one thing that's been very clear under the Narduzzi era, and I just talked to numerous people, when it comes to live periods in practice where it's full-blown 110% like game-like they're tackling, it is very, very physical. There are guys that have left the program because they're not able to keep up with the physicality of the practices. I think that's one thing that Narduzzi does really well. He tries to get this as much as game-like as possible. I think back in, if I'm not mistaken, 18 or 19, they went a little bit less in practice, not as hard, and you kind of saw it show up during the season where they weren't tackling very well. The 5-7 season, they weren't tackling well. And I think it's because they were not going as hard in practice in terms of physicality. Well, I can tell you this from a number of different people I've talked to. Pitt is practicing it's a lot of physicality. Saturday is another one of those aspects where you get a couple of injuries. Obviously, you want to keep guys healthy, but you got to play at a very physical, high-level pace because it's important to prepare your football team for the upcoming season. That stuff's very, very important. But the wide receiver depth, it sounds like we have more. But again, I need to see it with my own eyes. It's great to hear about this stuff, but I want to be able to see it with my own eyes. And, week 1 and week 2 will be great. Pitt should take care of business and do what it needs to do. But week 3 in Morgantown against West Virginia, that's when we're going to find out a lot about this football team. And I'm going to be very critical of this football team coming week 3. West Virginia, 70+ new players. They got 30,000 season tickets, which is a little bit lower for how much they talk about attendance. I mean, Jesus, they have a 60,000 seat stadium. They've only sold 30,000 season tickets, which is absolutely wild to me. I know that doesn't include student tickets, but I mean, you'd think there'd be more. But very good comment. Appreciate it. Steven, with this schedule, who does Pitt have a better roster than or equal to, or the ones that their roster don't match up with, in your opinion? I think that they're probably, personally right now with their roster, I think they're top 5. I think number 5 or number 6 in terms of rosters. The top end rosters are Clemson number 1. I think Clemson probably has a damn good roster, or one that's probably 1A, 1B would be Miami. I think Miami's got a damn good roster in the ACC this year. SMU has done a good job. They got unlimited funds down there. I think they've done a great job of being able to really replicate that. Kevin Jennings is back. I think the experience for him that he was able to have in the college football playoff, the cold weather certainly got to him. Personally, I would have loved to have seen Cam Ward in Miami up in Happy Valley. I think that would have been a better football game. And personally, I think Miami would have won just because of how many points they score and how well their defense was playing down the stretch. That would have been a lot of fun. Florida State, I think I got them in the middle of the pack behind Pitt because they suffered some injuries from guys that I've talked to down there. Tommy Castellanos, I think they're going to get their shit pushed in week 1 by Alabama. The guy opened his mouth. I'm not sure why he did that, especially a team coming off like what they were like 3-9 or 2-10 last year. 2-10? I mean, why you're even talking about that? Especially of all people, Tommy Castellanos, who got benched at Boston College because he sucked. I mean, not sure about that. Trying to think who else. Who else in that front group? I'm also very interested to see what does North Carolina look like with Bill Belichick. He's brought in a number of different guys there as well. Pitt was able to grab Zion Ferguson, 4-star cornerback out of North Carolina, which he's done a really good job so far this camp as well. He'll get some time on the football field this year as well. But when it comes to those teams, I think here, let me pull up the list. I actually had a list because I'm going to be doing a video on this as well, really guessing or predicting the top, really the top. They were really 1 from 16 when it comes to teams this year, 1 to 17. let me see, pull up my notes here. Yeah, so like Clemson, Miami. I think those probably are the two best rosters. Clemson, Miami, SMU's number 3. I think they got a tremendous roster. They bring back a lot as well. They brought in a good number of good players as well. A surprise team to watch out for, in my opinion, from the list that I have here, which is pretty unique, Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech has done a much better job, and Brent Key has done a hell of a job in bringing certain guys in from the Georgia area and finally recruiting the Georgia area at a very good rate. Georgia's going to be a team to watch. Duke is going to be a team to watch. They brought in the quarterback, PJ Mensah, the quarterback transfer from Tulane. I still think that Pitt's got a better roster than them and a better roster than Georgia Tech. But you look at the rosters from overall, they're better than Wake Forest. They're better than Virginia Tech. They're better than Virginia. Syracuse has some new guys in there. Agnelli, the quarterback transfer from Notre Dame, he's there as well. They got another quarterback transfer in there. They're having a quarterback battle, but they're better than them. Let's see here. Yeah. I have them in front of Wake Forest, Virginia Tech. I have Pitt in front of Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, Virginia, Syracuse, Stanford. Cal is going to be absolutely horrid. Cal will probably be the worst team in the ACC because they lost so much in the spring portal. They just didn't spend any money at all. In which, they made the changes with Ron Rivera now coming in. They changed their athletic director. They brought in a Nike CEO to bring in more cash that way, more capital. He's going to be able to raise more capital through that way, but they'll probably take him a couple years. So Pitt's in front of, for me, Wake Forest, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Stanford, North Carolina, NC State. And then I think what the teams I have in front of Pitt, Clemson, Miami, SMU, and Louisville. I think Pitt's really at number 5. I think, for me, again, Clemson, Miami, SMU, Louisville. I think Louisville's got a damn good roster. Miller Moss, a transfer quarterback from USC. I think he's actually a pretty damn good quarterback. I think just Lincoln Riley's having a real issue up there. And again, he's just a scummy coach to begin with. But, those are the 4 teams I think for sure that I have in front of Pitt. And then we'll watch and see how Pitt produces through, week 3, 4, and 5. And then you really have that conversation. But Pitt has an opportunity to prove me wrong to where they're able to jump in front of a Syracuse because they have Duquesne, Central Michigan, West Virginia, and then they have a bye week. And after their bye week, you got Louisville at home. That's an opportunity to prove to me, hey, they've got an opportunity to prove they're better than Louisville. I just think Jeff Brom is a hell of a football coach in the offense side of the football. Miller Moss is better than Tyler Shuck, in my opinion, from last year. Miller Moss, I like Louisville's wide receiver room. I think they got a good offensive line and a good running back room. Their defense is where I have more questions and see, what's their defense going to look like going into this season. But hey, if you're able to score points, you can really compete with anybody. I think, for a guy like Jeff Brom, he's done a hell of a job there. And again, Louisville's got a lot of resources as well there, and they certainly used it this past year. See as we go into it here. Again, BC Thompson, appreciate you as always with the super chat, guys. If you have any questions, make sure if you want to, super chat button down below. Also, if you're over on the channel now, head over here to YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe. Helps the channel grow and helps us with the algorithm to get more conversation in the chat. And I think obviously I'm going to pull it up here too. Pull up Pitt's schedule here one more time, and as we get closer, Again, I've had Pitt for this upcoming season 8-4, 9-3. I think this where the opportunity is. I think I'm going towards more. The beginning of the year and during the spring, I was at 8-4. I'm kind of shifting towards 9-3, but that's kind of where I'm at 8-4, 9-3. But as we get closer to the season, we'll see which way more I'm shifting towards. Actually, before I put this up here, I'm going to bring up their future schedule. This is actually a really good conversation because I saw West Virginia fans, which, again, I laugh at this stuff because some of the stuff that West Virginia people and their fans say just are just out of this world. For instance, they talk about, Pitt only sells out for West Virginia, Penn State, Notre Dame. Yeah, we get that. But the same thing is applied to West Virginia. They don't ever sell out that stadium, and they're 10,000 seats smaller than us. How are they not selling their stadium out if they're going to talk about attendance when they're only averaging 48 to 50,000 fans? I never understood that from me. But also, too, when we do here, future schedules here. Let's see. Pull this up here. Share my screen with you guys here. Here we go. All right. I think you should be able to see that now. Here's the Pitt future schedule. And again, for me personally, this is always fun to look at. What did I do there? There we go. There we go. All right. So now you see the schedule or the future schedules here. And for me, some of the stuff that's very normal here, obviously 2025, we got Duquesne, Central Michigan, West Virginia, and Notre Dame. One of the topics that I saw online was like a guy like Ben Booth who just talks out his ass 90% of the time, which is actually pretty comical. Says, well, Pitt has all the space going forward. Well, he said here, Pitt has one spot here. Why aren't they scheduling West Virginia? Well, why they're not scheduling West Virginia? They already have 2 Power 4 conference teams on the schedule, Ben. I mean, use your head a little bit. Why would Pitt schedule 3? So then if Pitt scheduled West Virginia here, which also, too, if we pull up their schedule, I'd have to pull it up. Are they even open one of these days that's not even open here? Does it match up? And from what I saw before, it doesn't match up. So they can't face them. But why would Pitt in 2026 schedule UCF, Wisconsin, and West Virginia? That's 11 Power 4 teams. Nobody else is doing that. In 2026, you got Miami, UCF, Wisconsin, and hopefully here, a group of 5 or an FCS team that you want in here to match up a lot like this 2025 year. In 2027, the Dublin, Ireland game versus Wisconsin, that's going to be, that'll be, which, I mean, again, I guess cool. The game's in Dublin, Ireland. I will not be going to that game. I would have loved to have that game at home. I would have loved to see Wisconsin at home. It's kind of actually one of the teams I like in the Big Ten, like Michigan State, Wisconsin, facing those schools, Michigan, like all those schools. I always liked facing them, Iowa. But, we lose a home game there because it's over in Dublin, Ireland. We'll see what that looks like. I certainly know there's a number of Pitt football fans that I know they'll be going to that football game. But 2 more open slots there. This season begins really early. I mean, holy hell, the 28th of August. Then you have 10:30, October 30th. You have UConn. There's 2 more spaces there, so potentially you have an area to put a game in there, potentially. In 2028, you have UConn, Notre Dame. We'll see what it looks like there. And then in 2029, the game is brought back. So, I mean, really 3 years. 2026, you have no room. 2027 and 2028, depending upon where West Virginia has games at, I would say really the only room that they really have is in 2028 for sure. 2028 is where they have room for sure. But West Virginia does not. So I mean, it's comical, and they're like, the one topic that Ben was talking about was, well, Pitt needs West Virginia. They don't want to schedule West Virginia. It's like, dude, you only sell out one game a year too. It's either Pitt or Penn State, and there was like 15 to 20,000 Penn State fans at Mountaineer Stadium. I mean, that was absolutely comical, especially too for how much they pride themselves on fans. I mean, that was absolutely embarrassing. Penn State fans were just absolutely just dropping bombs on that football team. But then again, too, even at Happy Valley, though, Penn State fans talk about it. But then Ohio State, if you looked at this past year's game, Ohio State, they had at least like 25,000 fans there at Happy Valley. I mean, there's just a sea of red in numerous different places. It's not hard to find when you have a whiteout against Ohio State and there's people wearing red. I mean, it's not hard to find them. Let's see here. There we go. So I thought that was a really good topic overall that I saw. Talking about the schedule, but now let's pull up Pitt's schedule here. Let's see here. All right, let's see. We pull it up here. Here we go. Share the screen here. Right off the Pitt football website here. There we go. Closer there. So obviously the first game of the year, which I think that this should probably be played more often just because they're so close to each other, that they're just obviously playing the game at Acrisure Stadium every year. That's an easy game for Pitt in terms of, one, winning that game, but then number two, having a team right there where there's no travel. It's easy to get a win there. September 6th, obviously at home on ESPNU. Central Michigan, Pitt taking care of victory there. I guarantee, they'll be 2-0 right there. So you have your two games right there, both of them at home. Then you hit the road September 13th on ESPN primetime, Saturday at 3:30 in the afternoon, which is really, really good. This game is going to be something. Again, I have Pitt winning this football game because obviously the new entire staff, Rich Rodriguez, and again, we've seen in the numerous clips from Rich Rodriguez, which has been absolutely wild. I mean, he's been pretty much. I mean, I've never seen a coach. I know you're newer and you're trying to raise the standard of what you want to build with your culture, but just shitting on your team for just multiple weeks in a row is pretty crazy. And then 2 days ago, they added a guy from a JUCO, 6-foot linebacker, like 220 pounds. I mean, out of a JUCO. Not sure how that's going to work out. And they added a defensive end from Oregon State that didn't do anything in 2 years for Oregon State, but then did well at like Wyoming or wherever he was, or some FCS school he was at in like 2022, I think it was. So they're still adding guys through the portal, which I don't know how, that's probably a really bad thing. But then you have a bye week here, Louisville. This is going to be a very interesting game right here, man. This game right here, again, I have Louisville in front of Pitt. I think this is going to be a close game. Again, they got a lot of talent, especially quarterback Miller Moss, really good wide receiver core. So we're going to see how well the defense does in that game and how well our offense performs. Boston College after that. The next week after that, next Saturday, Boston College here. Billy O'Brien, a bunch of guys coming in here to Pitt. Obviously, Boston College has really had Pat Narduzzi's number for the majority of years, so this will be an interesting game to watch for sure. And then Florida State, I have Pitt winning this game at Florida State. They've had a number of injuries. Tommy Castellanos, I don't know how that's going to work out. Their wide receiver room seems to be a little sketchy still. Their offensive line and defensive line, from everything that I've seen, has not looked good. And again, we'll watch them throughout the year, but I don't know how that's going to be able to do. At Syracuse, this will be an interesting game. Fran Brown is a hell of a football coach. Got a new transfer quarterback up there. Two transfer quarterbacks are having a battle. We'll see what that looks like. NC State certainly lost a lot. They're going through a lot of trouble. The next week after that, you got Stanford. Pitt should handle business here, but the question I have here is, it's going out to Stanford. How does Pitt handle the travel across the country? Time change. How do they really prepare for that game? And personally, I would actually love to go to this game and go out to Stanford. Beautiful area. Anybody that talks about it. And then you have Nate Bynum, who's the offensive coordinator right now at Stanford. That'd be a really fun game to go to. I'd actually like to go to that game. A bye week, and then really, in my opinion, the hardest stretch of the Pitt football schedule. You got a bye week, and then you have Notre Dame right out of the gate at Acrisure Stadium. That'll be a sellout crowd. November 15th on a Saturday. I expect this game to be prime time on ESPN or ABC or NBC, depending upon what both these teams look like going forward. Then you're at Georgia Tech down in Georgia. I might actually go to this game too, because it's always fun to go down to Atlanta. Georgia Tech, I think, is actually going to be a really good team this year. I think Haynes King does a good job for what he has. They run the football very well. Faulkner, the offensive coordinator for Georgia Tech, I think is a tremendous football coach. I think extremely underrated. One of the higher paid offensive coordinators in the ACC. Georgia Tech was able to hang on to him and give him a huge raise. I think he's making like $1.8 to $2 million this year. And then Miami. We'll see what Miami looks like this year. One of the things that always comes around at Miami at this time is, are they really, really good where they're playing hard, or do they just flop like most years, and then they're just not playing as hard as, is what people would really think they would be, and Pitt gets a victory out of that. So this will be an interesting game, what they look like, but let's assume that they're really good, like I think they're going to be. That's a hell of a stretch right there. I mean, that's a hell of a stretch. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and Miami. Good thing is you have 2 of the 3 at home. If the 2 of the 3 were on the road, I'd be concerned. But this game is going to be extremely tough for Pitt. They're going to be the underdog, certainly in this game, especially if Notre Dame's a national title contender, and then potentially an underdog here, potentially if Miami's in the hunt. But we'll watch it, though, for where Pitt's at, though. Pitt could be in that 7-8 win range already. If you have 8 wins going into the Notre Dame game, you're saying what 8, 9, 10, 11. So you'd be probably 8-1. You'd be 8-1 at this point. We'll see what Pitt looks like. So, guys, we're about 55 minutes in right now. Don't see any more super chats. Don't see any more questions. Guys, again, another great show with you guys. And again, appreciate all of the conversation from each and every one of you. Again, the defense wins the scrimmage. A number of guys really stepping up. Again, Jasir Whittington, Blaine Spires, Isaiah O'Neal, Braylon Lovelace, Kyle Lewis, Rasheem Biles, Cruz Brookins on defense, on offense, Eli Holstein, Ryan Bayer, Tony Kinsler, Blue Hicks, Lyndon Cooper, Raphael Poppy Williams. Defense claims victory. The offense is better so far than what it was last year, which is a good thing, but they need to be more consistent. So, guys, that's all we have for this week. We'll try to do more shows during the week. Been busy in my career overall, but look to do more shows because more information will be coming out. We got more time, and really, we're getting close to the actual games here. Roughly less than 3 weeks away now after last Saturday, less than 3 weeks away. The games are getting closer. The time is getting closer, and we're almost going to be at Acrisure Stadium for the first game of the year, week 1 on August 30th, Pitt versus the Duquesne Dukes. Guys, as always and forever, appreciate everything you guys do to support the channel. The show is what it is because of you. Cannot thank you enough for supporting the show. Guys, as always and forever, hail to Pitt and hail the ACC. I'll see you next time.